And the Russian foreign minister has called on Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi. The two sides exchanged views on regional and global issues of mutual interest, including, of course, the ongoing war in Ukraine and the situation in West Asia. During the meeting, in fact, Prime Minister Modi reiterated India's consistent position that dialogue and diplomacy are the best way forward. Lavrov is in New Delhi to attend the BRICS Foreign Ministers meeting, and India is hosting the two-day BRICS Foreign Ministers meeting in the national capital. The war in Iran, global fuel crisis, top items on the agenda dominating the talks. In fact, the meeting coming as the bloc of leading emerging economies faces division over the war in Iran. It also coincides with the U.S. president's ongoing China visit, of course. The Indian External Affairs Minister has reaffirmed the country's stand that dialogue and diplomacy are the only sustainable means of resolving conflicts. He added that the conflict in West Asia merits particular attention amid the risks to maritime traffic and disruptions to energy infrastructure. Jaishankar's call for stability coming amid internal divisions within the grouping that has expanded over the course of the years. In addition to the original members, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS now includes Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE as well. On the sidelines of the meeting, in fact, Prime Minister Modi met the Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi, also in New Delhi, to participate in that meeting. This also comes amid the rising tensions in West Asia and marking the first high-level diplomatic engagement involving India since the Iran war started. Araghchi arrived in the national capital aboard an aircraft carrying a pointed message from Tehran. The inscription on the plane, as you can see, that reference to the 168 school children in Iran who were killed in that strike on a school. This was on the 28th of February. Araghchi, in fact, has called on BRICS member countries to explicitly condemn violations of international law by the US and Israel and prevent the politicization of international institutions.
Member states and all responsible. That false sense of entitlement must be shattered by all of us. Iran, therefore, calls upon BRICS member states and all responsible members of the international community to explicitly condemn violations of international law by the United States and Israel, including their illegal aggression against Iran, a member of BRICS.
The shadow of the war in West Asia looming large over that meeting, of course, the ceasefire between Iran and the US remaining precarious with frequent accusations of violations in the Strait of Hormuz, the war of blockades in this critical waterway triggering that global energy crisis. In fact, India depends heavily on imports from the Gulf, so that's the other significant factor. The last time Trump visited China was way back in 2017. A lot has changed since then. But will this visit be a game changer in any way? A lot needs to happen for that. For now, a lot is riding on the discussions between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping at a time when the Iran war, the Strait of Hormuz, and the tensions over Taiwan are dominating the global agenda. When the two leaders posed for the cameras, Xi Jinping appeared composed, also steady, perhaps a reflection of his long tenure in power. Donald Trump, meanwhile, showed visible shifts in expression. He twitched, even grimaced during the photo op. Donald Trump, who is generally accustomed to eating McDonald's, is being forced to expand his palate as well at tonight's state banquet in Beijing. The menu including lobster in tomato soup, crispy beef ribs, Beijing roast duck, stewed seasonal vegetables, slow-cooked salmon in mustard sauce, and also trumpet shell-shaped pastry, just to name a few. As the dinner cab between the two leaders went smoothly, there was little when it came to actual substance. What was on the menu, really? The first day of talks between the two sides appeared cordial, with both the leaders emphasizing cooperation and stability in the relationship. At that state banquet inside the Great Hall of the People, Xi Jinping said the relationship, in fact, is the most important in the world today, saying both countries must make it work and never mess it up. He also said China's rejuvenation and Trump's Make America Great Again vision could go hand in hand. Take a listen in.
The people of China and the United States are both great peoples. Achieving the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and making America great again can absolutely go hand in hand, help each other succeed, and advance the well-being of the whole world.
U.S. President Donald Trump struck a notably warm tone when it comes to the ties with China, calling the U.S.-China relationship one of the most consequential in world history. Trump highlighted cultural and economic links between the two countries, using Chinese food in America as a symbol of deep people-to-people ties.
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say. Just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans. Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
But behind the diplomatic optics, the smiles, the praise, the Iran war and the future of the Strait of Hormuz remains central to the discussions and also overall that visit. According to a White House readout, Trump and Xi agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain a free waterway and that Iran should not be able to impose payments or restrictions on global shipping through the strait. The issue has taken on greater urgency now after Iran closed the strait following the U.S.-Israel strikes, disrupting global energy supplies and impacting oil and gas shipments around the world, sending out those ripple waves that we've been talking about. Trump, meanwhile, has been pursuing to ensure that the Strait of Hormuz remains open for international shipping, while simultaneously maintaining a strict U.S. naval blockade specifically against Iranian vessels. Hormuz currently reeling between Iran's control and the U.S. blockade. In fact, on X, the White House posted an image from the meeting between the two countries. In its post, the White House claims that China has strongly opposed the militarization in the Hormuz Strait and agrees with the U.S. that both Iran, that Iran cannot possess nuclear weapons. So that's the crucial takeaway as well. The visit also coming amid differences within the Trump administration over how China should actually respond to the crisis. Before the two leaders even sat down to toast the relationship between the two sides, the U.S. Secretary of State called on Beijing to take a more active role in stabilizing the region and helping restore normal shipping through the strait. Not just that, he urged Beijing to assert diplomatic pressure on Iran at the United Nations. Here's what he said.
He did, and it was important because the Chinese side said they are not in favor of militarizing the Straits of Hormuz and they're not in favor of a tolling system. And that's our position.
At the same time, a confidential U.S. intelligence assessment has raised concerns about China's role during the conflict. According to the report, China has used the Iran war to expand its military, economic, and diplomatic advantage over the United States. The report claims Chinese companies discussed sending weapons to Iran through third countries to hide their origin, while China also sold weapons to the U.S. allies in the Persian Gulf reportedly as they faced Iranian missile and drone attacks. The assessment also saying China helped countries deal with energy shortages after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz disrupted global supplies. U.S. officials believe the war has also provided Beijing an opportunity to study American military operations, including how America deploys resources and responds to regional conflicts. Not just that, the report notes that the conflict has drained U.S. munitions stockpiles and damaged military hardware and facilities across West Asia. Taiwan also emerged as a key issue, of course, during that visit so far. While Trump did not publicly comment on Taiwan, very interestingly, China's official readout said Xi Jinping warned that the issue could push the U.S.-China relationship down a dangerous path and even lead to conflict. Remember, Xi Jinping had called the Taiwan issue the most important in this relationship and urged the U.S. side to exercise extra caution in handling the Taiwan question. The Chinese leader also warning that the conflict between China and America could break out if the issue is mishandled. So that's the red line by Xi Jinping clearly. Rubio, meanwhile, cautioned that any Chinese attempt to seize Taiwan by force will be a terrible mistake. The US reportedly said this while asserting that Washington's policy towards Taiwan remains unchanged. Trump has also invited Xi Jinping to visit the White House in September. However, it's not yet clear whether the Chinese leader has accepted that invitation. On to Cuba now, which has officially run out of diesel and fuel oil, pushing the country into one of its worst ever energy crises. Huge parts of the capital now going dark for up to 22 hours a day. Imagine that. This is as the country's power grid struggles to stay alive without imported fuel, so the crisis is worsening. For locals, this crisis is becoming nothing short of a nightmare.
Electricity is essential, and when we experience much hours of power outages, it is impossible to go anywhere.
Whenever the power comes back on, everyone says we have to hurry up and cook before they cut the electricity again.
And even as the crisis intensifies, the country says it's ready to review a new US aid proposal offered by Washington. Cuba's energy minister has said the country has no diesel and no fuel oil left, forcing the government to run the national grid only on domestic crude, natural gas, and limited renewable energy. The blackouts also have spread across the capital this week, adding to the growing public anger over shortages of food, medicine, basic services.
The sum of the different types of fuel, crude oil, fuel oil, of which we have absolutely none, diesel, of which we have absolutely none, I am being repetitive. The only thing we have is gas from our wells, where production has grown.
The government saying it has installed more than 1,300 megawatts of solar power in the last 2 years, but officials admit that grid instability caused by the fuel shortage has reduced the system's effectiveness, thereby worsening the ongoing crisis. Cuba also saying global oil prices and transport costs have risen sharply during the West Asia conflict, making it even harder to secure imports. Amid the collapse, Cuba's foreign minister has also said the country is ready to examine that $100 million US aid offer announced by the US Secretary of State. The government says it wants details on how the proposal would work and what conditions would be attached. Of course, there would be conditions. Cuba has traditionally depended on Venezuela and Mexico for oil shipments, but those supplies have fallen sharply after Donald Trump threatened tariffs on countries sending fuel to the island.